Welcome to Paranomaly. Fiction first, then the truth. If you have a story of your own, there's a place to share it at paranomalymedia.com. The website is in the episode description. Tonight's story is as follows. I've spent enough time in the woods to know the difference between being alone and feeling alone. Most people think the forest is quiet. It isn't. There's always something moving. Wind through branches, birds and insects, or water in the distance. Even at night, the woods feel alive. That's normal. And when all of that stops, you notice. I'd been walking alone for 3 days. Not survival hiking, not one of those man versus nature trips people post online. Just distance and silence and a break from people. I knew the trail system well enough to be comfortable. I had food, a GPS on my pack. I wasn't careless. That's important. People always assume hikers are careless. Most aren't. The trail narrowed as the sun started dropping behind the trees. Not dark yet, but close enough that the woods were beginning to flatten into shadow. I checked my watch. I still had time to reach the next marker before setting camp. Another mile. Easy. I kept walking, boots grinding dirt and loose stone beneath me. Steady pace, no rush. But that's when I noticed the silence. Not gradually. It was all at once, like someone had muted the world. No birds, no insects, no wind. Even my own footsteps sounded wrong. They were too loud. I stopped walking, and the silence stopped with me. I stood there for a few seconds, listening to nothing. Actually listening, trying to find one normal sound, anything. But nothing came. Just that pressure, that feeling that something had changed around me. I laughed a little, not because it was funny, but because your brain wants to make things make sense. This is probably weather, or a predator nearby, or something normal. That's what I told myself. And I started walking again. The trail marker should have been close. White paint on a tree. Easy to spot, but it wasn't there. So I slowed down and I checked the GPS clipped to my shoulder strap. Still on trail. The map agreed. I kept moving. A few more minutes passed before I saw the marker. White paint. Old and faded. I remember staring at it, because I'd already passed that marker an hour earlier. The same split in the trunk, the same crack through the paint. I knew it. I turned around immediately, looked back down the trail behind me. There was nothing strange, no wrong turns, no forks, just forest. Dense enough now that the light barely touched the ground. I checked the GPS again. It still showed me moving north, still showed the trail exactly where it should be, but the marker was behind me now. That wasn't possible. I stood there, trying to force it to make sense. Long enough for the silence to start feeling heavier. Not quieter, heavier. Like the woods were waiting for something. I started walking faster, not panic, just enough to put distance between myself and whatever weird mistake I'd made. The trail curved around a ridge of rock, then narrowed again, then opened up slightly. And there it was, the marker. Again. Same tree, same split trunk, same crack through the paint. I stopped so fast that gravel slid beneath my boots. My stomach dropped hard enough to hurt. I looked around carefully this time. No intersections, no side trails, nothing. The woods were wrong. That was the first real thought that crossed my mind. Not confusing, not unfamiliar. Wrong. I reached for my satellite phone. I still had signal, and that should make me feel better, but it didn't. I almost called for help. Almost. But what was I supposed to say? The trees are repeating. The trees are wrong. So I forced myself to calm down a little and breathe slower. I looked at the GPS again. There was a ranger station south of my position. A short trail, not difficult terrain between here and there. Simple. Turn around, walk south, leave. That should have been easy. So I turned around and froze. Because there were footprints behind me. Fresh. Deep enough to still hold loose dirt around the edges. Not animal tracks, boot prints. Human. I stared at them for several seconds before realizing they weren't mine. They were the wrong tread, a different size, and they came from deeper in the woods, not from the trail. And they stopped about 15 feet behind where I'd been standing. Just stopped, like someone had been standing there watching me. I looked around. There was nothing, just trees, darkness thickening between them. No movement, no sound. But I could feel it now, that pressure, the instinct that tells you you're being watched before your brain catches up. I backed away slowly, kept my eyes on the trees, and the trail no longer mattered, the marker no longer mattered. I just wanted distance. Then I saw the cave. There's a small opening in the rock face ahead, half hidden behind hanging roots and loose stone. I stopped immediately. It shouldn't be there. I knew this trail. I had hiked it before. There are no cave systems. But there it was, and cold air rolled out from inside of it. Not a breeze, a steady current, like the mountain was exhaling. I should have turned around. Instead, I walked toward it, not because I wanted to, because every instinct I had suddenly screamed that the trees behind me were worse. That's the part I still can't explain. The cave felt wrong, but outside felt dangerous. I reached the entrance slowly, the temperature dropped immediately, and the sound changed too. The forest vanished into darkness behind me. It was swallowed. I pulled out my flashlight, and the beam disappeared into the darkness that felt deeper than it should have. Not black, it just felt endless. I took a few steps inside, then stopped. There were sounds deep in the cave. Not movement, just voices far away. Too distorted to understand. At first I thought it was water echoing through the rock, then I heard my name, clearly. Close enough that I turned around. There was nothing behind me. Then it came again, my name, deeper in the cave this time, and underneath it, another sound, dogs barking, in the distance. Echoing through the tunnels. My chest tightened so hard it hurt because I hadn't called for help. No one should be searching for me yet. The voices got louder, more than one now, calling my name, telling me they were close. And somewhere behind those voices, I heard something else moving, slowly, deliberately, not trying to hide anymore. I raised the flashlight towards the sound, and the beam was shaking in my hand, and deeper in the cave, something moved into the light. What you just heard was inspired by reports tied to wilderness disappearances, national parks, and a body of cases many people now associate with the term missing 411. The phrase itself comes from investigator David Paulides, a former police officer who began collecting reports of unusual disappearances in remote wilderness areas across the United States and Canada. The reason these cases continue to hold people's attention isn't because every disappearance is paranormal. People absolutely get lost in the wilderness. Exposure kills, falls happen, animals attack, nature is dangerous. But some cases contain details that continue to repeat often enough to make people uncomfortable. Experienced hikers disappear from familiar trails. Hunters vanish in areas they know well. Children are found miles away in terrain they shouldn't have been able to cross. Search dogs fail to track scents, and survivors sometimes describe confusion, silence, or the overwhelming feeling that something was wrong before they disappeared. One of the most discussed details is the sudden silence reported in the wilderness before an encounter or disappearance. Hunters and outdoorsmen describe the woods going quiet all at once. No birds, insects, or movement. And people who spend time outdoors notice this immediately because forests are rarely truly silent. That silence appears again and again and again in reports. Another recurring detail is cave systems. Many disappearances occur near areas filled with underground caverns, abandoned mines, rock formations, or complex cave networks. This matters because cave systems distort sound, confuse direction, and create terrain that's difficult to search properly. But for many people, the fear comes from something else. The feeling that the environment itself stops behaving correctly. One case often discussed in connection to these patterns is the disappearance of experienced hunter Aaron Hedges in Montana in 2014. Hedges was hunting the Crazy Mountains, an area he knew well. He wasn't inexperienced, he was familiar with the terrain and had hunted there before. At some point during the trip, he separated from the other members of his group. When he failed to return, search teams began combing the wilderness. What makes this case stand out is what was found afterward. Some of Hedges' gear was discovered in locations that had already been searched multiple times. His backpack was eventually recovered containing supplies, food, and survival equipment. Items many people believe an experienced outdoorsman would not willingly abandon. Other belongings were found miles apart from one another across difficult terrain. The distance involved raises questions for many people following the case because portions of the route would have required crossing harsh wilderness while apparently injured or disoriented. Even more unsettling for some was the condition of the discoveries themselves. Certain items appeared almost placed, not scattered naturally or destroyed by weather or animals, just there. His remains were eventually found years later, but the exact sequence of events leading to his death remains unclear, and the case is still widely discussed in wilderness disappearance circles. Another case that continues to disturb people is the disappearance of Dennis Martin in 1969. Dennis was 6 years old when his family visited the Great Smoky Mountains National Park in Tennessee. On June 14th, near Spence Field, Dennis and several other children were playing a game in the woods. The children split up briefly, intending to surprise the adults by jumping out from different directions, but Dennis never came back. And the timeline is terrifyingly short. Only moments passed before his father realized he was gone, and search efforts began almost immediately. Hundreds of people eventually joined the search, including park rangers, volunteers, Green Beret, and members of the National Guard. Despite this massive effort, no confirmed trace of Dennis was ever found. No clothing, no remains, nothing definitive. And then there were the reports. Multiple witnesses later described hearing an enormous scream echoing through the mountains shortly after the disappearance. One family reported seeing a rough-looking man moving quickly through the woods, carrying something over his shoulder around the same time Dennis vanished. The figure was never identified. Weather conditions during the search also became dangerous very quickly, with heavy rain complicating efforts and washing away potential evidence. Search dogs reportedly struggled to maintain a reliable track, and the case remains unsolved more than 50 years later. There are also survivor accounts, people who disappeared briefly and later returned describing confusion or memory gaps or behavior they couldn't explain afterwards. Some describe hearing voices, others report losing track of time completely, and some simply can't explain how they ended up where they were found. One of the reasons these stories continue to spread is because the wilderness itself already creates a primal fear. Distance feels different in woods. Darkness feels heavier, and sound behaves strangely. And once landmarks disappear, even familiar terrain can become disorienting very quickly. Most missing person cases likely do have ordinary explanations, but the reason people continue talking about these disappearances is the pattern, the same details appearing over and over again. The silence and isolation, confusion, cave systems, fear. Experienced outdoorsmen making decisions that don't make sense, and perhaps the most unsettling of all, many of these people are never found. The wilderness is still largely unexplored. There are enormous stretches of land people rarely see, cave systems that extend for miles underground, forests capable of swallowing sound, light, and direction. And when someone disappears out there, sometimes the only thing left behind is the question of what they encountered before they vanished. Because whether these cases are caused by exposure, panic, environmental factors, human violence, something science has not fully explained yet, or something else entirely, the result is the same. People walk into the wilderness every year, and some of them never come back.